tonight is that we're going to go through a proposal that we're going to bring to voters. As you can see, proposed capital project phase 4, adjusting for inflation. So before we begin, I just want to clarify, this is not a new capital project. This is officially a request for an add-on, and the excellent thing about this add-on is that it will have zero impact on taxpayers, on taxes. We are using something called a capital reserve, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. Brandon or Patrick, if we can go to the next slide. So, today's purpose, as I just said, a supplemental capital tax or a capital project with zero tax impact. And folks, so that everybody understands, all capital projects have phases. Currently, we're in phase 3. Our heaviest impact in our capital project due to the rising costs of goods, materials, work, labor, was in phase 3. It's been a priority to make sure that we do whatever we can to save phase 3. Unfortunately, we had to have a conversation with our Lindbergh community not too long ago, just last year, when we started seeing the true impact and how it increased over the years. It is a result of COVID. I hate blaming things on COVID, but we know the price of eggs, the price of paper towels, the cost of living has increased drastically since 2020. That has also impacted school districts and capital projects. You may have seen, I'm not going to mention them by name, but you may have seen other local school districts in the news recently that have cut out full phases from their capital project. We wanted to make sure, and why we had to talk to the Lindbergh community, we settled on that we were going to move Lindbergh, at least the majority of Lindbergh, to an additional capital project in the future, because whatever work we do, we want to make sure that we're doing right. Tonight, we're here to share how we are able to put some of that work, such as Lindbergh, back into the project, but I just wanted to set that stage for you. To continue to set the stage, Patrick, can you bring us to our next slide? This just reviews some of the items that I've reviewed with the district. We've reviewed with the district over the past, especially year. Looking at inflation, historic inflation, construction costs, 28.3%. Since that sounds big, we wanted to make sure that we understood a dollar amount that went with that, equivalent to $21.2 million out of a $75 million project. Just looking at that first line, obviously everybody understood last year, now, why inflation has been so impactful on this capital project. Despite these challenges, we remain committed. This $8.5 million supplemental project that we're proposing tonight, big and in bold, zero impact on property taxes. Why? School districts have the option over years. It's not a one and done. They set up capital reserves. People sometimes get confused with reserves. They say, well, why don't you just use reserves to pay for this or to pay for that? Reserves are very specified on what you can use them on, and it's not at any given time. For example, this is a capital reserve. We've been building this up for quite some time. This capital reserve can only be used on capital improvement, and it can't just be used because we say so. It's a requirement that we bring it to our public for vote. So this informational session is nothing new than we've talked about for the past several months, but it's absolutely to demystify if any confusion is still out there of what this project will address and exactly what people are voting on when it comes to our May 21st budget vote. You could see that. That budget vote, it's not a separate vote. It's when we vote for our overall budget. It's when new board members are also, when we vote on our board members and getting our board members, we usually have other propositions like buses. There is no bus proposition this year, but this capital project will be a proposition that is included on that vote. Work eligible for New York State Building Aid. This will fall into the same realm, the same procedure that all of our capital projects have previously, including the one that we're currently in, as this is a supplement to that. It will be eligible for building aid. If you're confused on building aid, the best way that I could refer to it is every building has something called aidable units. Those aidable units renew. It's usually 5 to 7 years that you could start dipping into them again. But they're there for a short period, or for that period of time. When you utilize those aidable units, then you have to wait a longer period of time for anything to become aidable on that building again. It's also important to understand that when we look at that aid for buildings, we know that when we touch a building, we want to make sure that we do it right. Not just do it right for our kids, of course that's a priority, do it right for our Kenton school community, but also aligned, not less important than the first two, for our overall Kenton community. Whatever we create will be there for generations to come, and we want to make sure, as I'm sure you've seen recently at Hoover and Edison, we're very strategic with how we do our work, that it looks right for the community. We're not putting up some structures that are ultra modern in a building that's from the 1940s or 50s. We're making things match, but it's still very clear that they are new state-of-the-art spaces. Patrick, if we could go to the next. So Lindbergh, I talked a few moments ago about Lindbergh and the things that had to be cut out. So let's talk about that for a moment. Lindbergh was slated in phase 3 to get a classroom addition. Not just one classroom, a whole section of classrooms. The challenge that we see with Lindbergh is that we have had a growing population in that area of town, and who comes to Lindbergh? Lindbergh is a beautiful building, has a lot of historic value to our community. It's also, surprisingly, it doesn't look like it when you see this mammoth structure, but it is quite small on the inside. Some modifications that we've made to pick up class space in the past, years ago, we took up, for example, the upper part of the auditorium and made those learning spaces. So we were going to address that with the capital project, add some addition, add more room in the cafeteria, add more classrooms for pull-out and targeted intervention, work on the plumbing at Lindbergh, work on the single point of entry. It's been a priority in this community before I even came here. Previous people that have worked on this project, including some of the individuals here tonight that are here to share with us, prioritize safety through single point of entry in our district. So Lindbergh was also on that slate. Plumbing, water safety. We know that that's been around in the discussion throughout not just our Kenton community, but especially throughout the nation, in particular Erie County. And we're, like in all of our buildings, addressing the water issues simultaneously. All of that had to be cut out. And then we figured out, remember, that more than $20 million deficit because of inflation. But then we found ways, working with our partners, to bid some of our projects that we had in the final phases to get some money back strategically. And by laying out some of the work a little bit differently and subcontracting it a little bit differently. So we were able to put back in there the water line replacement, priority, safety to life, single point of entry, safety to life, and that we were moving forward with. But the suggestion and what we're saying is, instead of, when we come for a new capital project in the future, that will, of course, have the interest and impact on taxpayers. If we could do some of that work through the capital reserve that will have zero impact on taxpayers right now, why don't we do that and get the approval while we're doing some of the work? And so part of that $8.5 million will work on that entryway, a new office, and some new classroom space in the front of the building. That was in the original design of the grander Lindbergh. Now, Lindbergh won't be redone. We will have to will not be done. We will have to revisit it in the future. And we may visit some other things with Lindbergh, part of more of a long-range plan. But that's what we are voting on for Lindbergh, is making sure that all of that work is done with our single point of entry the right way, even though single point was, we got it back into the project. We're connecting the office and making sure that it's done to the fullest extent that it can be done like was in the original plan. So we'll see that with Lindbergh. There's also some technology that we'll talk about later on in this presentation. Patrick, if we go to the next slide. So this doesn't look attractive. So some of the things that you do in capital work really have that pizzazz, that flair. Like we're here at Kenmore East tonight, it looks like we have a mud pit in the front, and yeah, I called it the front on Fries, and since it's summertime, we'll call it Fries, right, Trevor? It's past the cold. I know it's past the cold now, so we're not going to call it Freeze for at least another 4 days, but it will get there. It's going to stay Fries. But you'll see with Kenmore East, we had to take out this roof replacement because we didn't, remember, we wanted to do things right. And if we were going to be touching single point of entry, all the plumbing, what other thing would have to be eliminated? It's not a beautiful thing to look at, but a very necessary thing. If you drive by Kenmore East, you see some of the things that a poor roof is causing us. Some of the stuff that we see with water damage on the side. We deal with that same type of stuff inside. This part of the project alone, folks, I don't know about you, but when I put my roof on or when I got roof quotes 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was, okay, a roof will last you 30 years. It may cost you $10,000, but it'll last you 30 years. That same roof today probably costs you about $60,000 to do. It's no different when it comes to our buildings. This roof by itself is estimated to be $3.2 million to replace. So a big portion of the ask is, like I said, when we do Kenmore East, we want to touch it, make sure that it's done right. And you could see in the front of Kenmore East, we will have a new single point of entry that's already part of the plan. We will have a new visitors small parking lot that's part of the plan. A new grand parking lot that's part of a plan. The new tennis courts already part of the plan, okay? But making sure that we have the best options for our learning environments. Not the most attractive thing, but this needs to be part of the plan. That's why we're bringing it. It originally was, but we had to take it out due to inflation. And Kenmore East is just going to be a beautiful site. There's another thing that we'll talk about at Kenmore East in just a couple moments. Patrick, if we could go. So this is what I was referring to in Lindbergh with technology. This is part of it. We applied for a Smart Schools grant years ago, and through our departments now, we have been able to move that work forward. And part of that grant, we were able to buy cameras and wiring for all of our district. But there wasn't enough money in that grant to get them installed in all of our buildings. That's what we were going to try and do, finishing off phase 3. So what we're suggesting, what our plan is to bring that piece back into the mix so that all of our schools, by the time this capital project will be done, will all be wired with cameras. We'll all have that. Now remember, cameras, they can be a little preventative on the outside of the building. People see them. Maybe if they were possibly potentially thinking of something no good, they will think twice. But they are a security measure. Remember, a priority, keeping our buildings safe. When we were talking about single point of entry, cameras are no different. And folks, everybody that's here, everybody that's home, I will tell you, pretty much everybody knows my life before Kentom was working in the city of Buffalo. The city of Buffalo was at this point with cameras back in early 2000s. So this is, and it has to be a priority that we're moving forward with the technology. Now the good news is we're in today's technology with the cameras, not the early 2000 technology with the cameras. So they should last us quite a long time and serve the need that we have. Patrick, if we go on. Now this is old school. It's not as old school. I made a joke last night. I thought it was a funny joke. I'll tell it again. It's not like the old school, like from the movie Grease, of how you make announcements. You remember the lady with the bell, and there was another lady making the announcements, but it's a very similar concept. For those of you who don't know what that is an old school type of announcement system. The buttons, how you get into classrooms and all this other stuff. Well, ours are very old, and they are absolutely a safety issue. No matter what technology we have, nothing is better than in the very moment that you need the technology for safety, that you're able to make announcements over an entire school and never have a concern that something might fail. This project will enable us to continue to expand that. Tim, we're going to be able to add it to Lindbergh and Hoover, the Hoover complex. Already, Kenmore East here, they're not fully turned over, but you could see some of the new announcement system being put into place. Kenmore West has received the new announcement system, and Franklin. So then after this project, we'll have 5 of our 10 buildings that have full new announcement systems that aren't just old school announcing. They are connected to phone lines, they're connected to emergency, they're connected to doors. There's all sorts of things that these systems do to bring us into the current day and age of safety. Patrick, if we could go on. So I said I'd come back to Kenmore East. Another problem and something that we always wanted at Kenmore East, actually we planned for it when we did the fields. When we put the fields in, we made sure that we added the wiring and the pillars for lighting, because we knew that it was a priority. We just could not afford it at the time. What lighting does, and many people get afraid of lighting because they think of whitewash. Everybody know what whitewash is? It's when the lights turn on and the neighborhood's lit up 4 blocks away. Well, with the state-of-the-art lighting that we're talking about, LED lighting, you could angle that so only the field is lit up. You don't have the whitewash on the homes next to the field like you used to. But what it gives us as a district is a lot more opportunities for kids. We just faced something a couple weeks ago where our girls lacrosse team, the field that they were scheduled for, the heavy rains and different damage really led so that they couldn't play their competition. It was a horrible situation. Having more options like this, we're able to schedule more games, we're able to schedule more use of our athletic fields, and it gives our kids more opportunity. This is actually probably one of the lightest lifts of everything that we have in here financially, because we did all of the back work to be prepped for having this option someday. All of our people working on the project had the foresight to put that in when we did the fields. Patrick. So just to recap, this 8.5, zero impact. Lindbergh, single point of entry, restructured office layout. Kenmore East, roof replacement and LED lighting, that last bullet. District-wide camera installation, finishing off the job. Let's finish the work that we started. And then continuing upgrades to our PA and access and our door access systems. Patrick, if we could go to the next slide. So that brings us really to the end. Our vote day, we're asking everybody for their support. And folks, I can't emphasize enough, we are very strategic with our decision making. We are very poignant in doing the necessary research because we know the impact that it will have for generations to come. We take also very seriously the impact that we have on our neighborhoods and our community, including with taxes and with their dollars. And once again, just to reiterate, there will be zero tax impact, and that's why we're asking everyone for their support in getting this project done. Any questions or comments from anybody else at this time? Okay. With that being said, I please invite everyone at home that's watching and here to drive by Edison. Edison is going to be done and ready to be open for next September. Hoover is going to be done and ready to be open for next September. Drive by our Kenmore East field. That was the first part of the capital project that we're doing now. Oh, and by the way, drive by Kenmore West and you get a good bird's eye, or good view, I should say, poignant view of exactly, very similarly, I should say, what we're going to be doing to Kenmore East with their entranceway. Okay, with that, thank you for joining us, and everyone have a pleasant evening. If there's any questions, do not hesitate to reach out.